Hello everyone, and thank you once again for joining us for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather on the now first day of September 2018. On the first graphic, we've got a wind advisory out for the Yukon Flats and surrounding upland areas, and that's out throughout the day today. And the 25 to 35 mile per hour winds with occasional gusts to 45 miles an hour are expected to continue until midnight tonight, begin to improve actually, and then the advisory ends at midnight tonight. And we lost the August 31st winter storm warning we had out for the Northeast Brooks Range. That's ended now, but river levels are quite high over in this area due to the fair amount of precipitation that fell just today. Anywhere from 7/10 to nearly an inch has fallen in the Brooks Range here, with the heaviest amount back near an inch in a location back to the west here, but quite a bit of precipitation falling through here, and that's causing high rivers in those areas. Next graphic showing the high fire danger that's persisting here near along the upper Yukon River or in the Yukon Flats there, and it's actually elevated from where it was yesterday with some couple of extreme or near extreme areas there. And that is due to the winds kicking up and not much in the way of precipitation falling in that area. And a little bit back here to the west, near high fire danger criteria up there around the Deering, possibly, well, not Deering, more toward the Buckland area, and then even a smaller area up along the northwest coast. And that's about it, but a little bit of an increase, still some extreme there over the upper Yukon Valley. And again, that due to the winds, and that'll improve this evening. So fire danger will be much better up there tomorrow. And on to satellite imagery. Not a lot out over the Bering Sea. You can see some cirrus with the next front trying to push into the far western Aleutians, not even quite reaching the Komodorsky Islands here. That due to a big, large area of high pressure stationary or nearly stationary out over the Bering Sea in the Aleutians. And so all that moisture is getting directed northward, up and over the top of the ridge, and then coming in from the west-northwest out of the Arctic there. And you can see quite vividly here a frontal boundary from Canada right across the Brooks Range's north slope there, trailing on out toward Wrangel Island. And we've got moisture slowly sagging southward into the Tanana Valley, Fairbanks area, down toward the Alaska Range. But south of that, sunshine across south central Alaska today into the Copper River Basin, Prince William Sound, and even in toward the Kuskokwim Valley, as well as the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, but to a lesser extent. There's more in the way of clouds out in that area. Then we have a system here that yesterday or last night crossed the Kodiak Island area, exiting Bristol Bay, and that's slid across the Gulf of Alaska today and spread rain in across all of the southeast coastal areas, nearly half an inch falling in the Juneau area with this system today, and otherwise rainfall amounts anywhere from 1 to 3/10 or 1 to 2/10 elsewhere. So not a real big rain producer, but it did make for a cloudy, wet Saturday here across all the southeast coast. Moisture tapering off there at Yakutat, much lighter amounts recorded there, and then dry from the North Gulf Coast. On the chart, there's that low center roughly at 3 p.m. this afternoon, or 4 p.m. Mid-afternoon, you could call it, 1,007 millibars, and starting to weaken down. That's pushing the rain in, continuing the wet conditions. But again, amounts not all that heavy, and the wind's kicking up a little bit, but not all that strong, and that will move through tonight and dissipate tomorrow. Otherwise, here's the sunshine here over southern Alaska, clouds increasing over the Tanana Valley, especially northward with some areas of light precipitation. Showers starting to develop south of the Brooks Range now. Again, the heaviest precipitation up here along the mountains, as I mentioned, anywhere from 1/3 of an inch falling in the 12-hour period ending at 3 p.m. at Wainwright, Point Lay, Umiat Airfield, all picking up 1/3 of an inch of precipitation today. Same time period, much lighter amounts back toward the Arctic coast, since the bulk of the moisture now is down in over the Brooks Range, with the heaviest amounts occurring there. Very weak low center here, forming along the frontal boundary there. Otherwise, to the south, you can see high pressure ridging in over across southern Alaska, basically. Light offshore flow, so mostly clear Kodiak Island up into south central Alaska. Start picking up some clouds here as you head west due to the westerly flow coming in off the Bering Sea. But really not too bad. St. Lawrence Island, Savunga had some clear skies at times today, as well as portions of the Seward Peninsula. And the high center way out here to the west, 1,029 millibars. So lots of low clouds, fog, and maybe some areas of drizzle in some locations, but not too many reports of that going on. And that, again, tracking all the systems out here to the west, up and over the top of the ridge. And for tonight, one of those troughs, chunk of moisture will break off here and come eastward. That'll bring an increase in the low clouds, fog, and definitely reduce the flying conditions here for St. Lawrence Island. Could see some drizzle with that. And that same sort of pattern will be on the increase there for this Bering Strait as well. Otherwise, not much change out here. That low center starting to drift eastward. So low clouds, fog, light winds, permafrost, all the Aleutians, and ridging into the southwest interior. We'll keep it mostly cloud-free here, south central Alaska, Susitna, Matanuska Valley. This trough, any showers that develop with this, with that northwest flow, should be off the coast or off to the east of Kodiak Island. So it's just staying dry there, and dry for the North Gulf Coast. This front pushing southward, 1,018 millibar high helping to nudge that along with the upper wind flow. So a narrow band of light precipitation will come southward with it. The heaviest amounts will probably be over in the White Mountains, but chance of rain all the way down to Delta and Northway, possibly Tok. Dry, though, south of the mountains there in the Copper River Basin, the North Gulf Coast. And the low center here over the southeast coast, tracking inland, roughly through the central part of the Panhandle. So by midnight and after, the bulk of the rain, if it hasn't already, will be into Canada, and precipitation will slowly start to taper off and become more showery. And then by tomorrow afternoon, this whole mess will be out of the picture, although look for some lingering showers down here over the southeast part of the southeast coast, but generally dry, with some areas breaking out and seeing some sunshine there tomorrow, with winds not too bad on the light side. Still a lot of moisture here with that leftover from the frontal boundary that's pretty much dissipated, quite weak and really not moving, but areas of light rain and showers will be the rule across the Tanana Valley 40-mile country. Some of that could slip on down maybe into the northern Wrangles. Otherwise, look for sunshine tomorrow. South central Alaska, Prince William Sound, Kenai Peninsula, Kodiak Island. This trough, again, I think all the shower activity will be off to your east. So you'll see a dry day, hopefully with some sun. Very weak warm front slips into the northwest here. And just some areas of light precipitation possible in the green shaded area there. Whatever falls will be quite light, but that could reach all the way down into the Kobuk Valley. Better chance on the western Arctic coast there, but that's even light. This trough lingering in this area will keep flying conditions lower, with rain, drizzle, very light rain, mostly just drizzle if any precipitation falls at all. Areas of fog, low clouds, of course with that the IFR. That'll be increasing in Norton Sound. And this high center continuing to advance a little bit to the northeast there, coming into the south central Bering. And that's allowing that frontal boundary to finally get onto the chart, but staying west of the Aleutians. And then for Monday, another front drops down, bringing a chance of rain. A narrow band of light precipitation from Kotzebue Sound. That'll be pushing south and south, mostly to the east and a little bit to the south throughout the day Monday. A little bit heavier precipitation, more persistent up there in the eastern Arctic coast. But it looks like temperatures will stay warm enough that it'll be mostly in the form of rain, even on the eastern Arctic coast there for Kaktovik and Barrow. Another mostly sunny day for Kodiak Island up across southern Alaska into the Copper River Basin. Even the Kuskokwim Valley should be mostly sunny. And then more of the way of clouds, but dry here. Onshore flow pulling some cloudiness in off the Bering Sea in across the southwest interior. And there could be a little more clearing here over Bristol Bay than what I've got shown, but generally looking at low clouds, patchy areas of fog, and now that high center near the Pribilofs, far enough to the east, allowing this frontal boundary to finally make some headway and bring increasing wind and rain into the western Aleutians. Lows for tonight, 25 to 30 eastern North Slope and Arctic coast, otherwise in the 30s and 40s elsewhere, and the highs for tomorrow. 60, 65, Bristol Bay. Same thing for the Susitna Valley, south central Alaska, and mid-60s now for the northern Panhandle, mid-30s eastern Arctic coast. Lows the following morning, lower to mid-30s there for the eastern central Arctic coastal areas. Otherwise, mostly in the 40s throughout much of Alaska, 30s Copper River Basin, eastern interior, 45 to 50 in the Panhandle. Highs the following day on Monday, 60 south central Alaska, Copper River Basin, and Bristol Bay.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving into the flying weather part of the show here, we've got IFR into the Yukon Delta, mostly on the west-north coast there into Norton Sound, and then down here to the north side of the Alaska Peninsula, the Pribilofs up to St. Lawrence Island, back into the west-central Aleutians. Some IFR up here, central part of the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, otherwise marginal down into the Berks Range. Pretty good swath of marginal VFR through the central interior here, down in including much of the Alaska range, possibly into the northern Wrangles, but south of the mountains, good VFR right down to Prince William Sound, Kodiak, and much of the southwest interior. And the southeast coast for tomorrow afternoon, really nice after the early morning marginal VFR, but that'll linger into the afternoon over towards Stewart and Hyder, but generally improving down that way. Good VFR up to the north. And the interior, still some marginal VFR, Norton Sound IFR, Bering Sea as usual, a lot of IFR here, but mostly along the coast of the Yukon Delta and down to the north side of the Alaska Peninsula, north of the Aleutians. And then on Monday morning, that makes advance inland here across just about all the Yukon Delta, up across Norton Sound to the Nulato Hills, and then southward across parts of the Kuskokwim Delta, western areas, cutting off right around Togiak, north side of the Alaska Peninsula, Unalaska Island, a narrow band of marginal conditions for the central Aleutians, and the Panhandle areas of marginal VFR again, and that lingers into the afternoon. Really not much change there with VFR, southern Alaska, north and west of the Alaska Range, marginal VFR becomes IFR here for Norton Sound and out along the coast. Also IFR up there along the central, or much of the Arctic coast here, except from about Point Leon down will be marginal, and another batch of IFR starting to push into the far western Aleutians. Passes tomorrow, Anaktuvik and Adigan, both looking good. VFR flying for those passes, and for Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR also expected, and rainy as well. Windy, marginal VFR, south side, south entrance, so it'll probably be VFR with the lower conditions through the pass into the north. And that trend also for Isabel, marginal VFR. If there's any, we'll be on that northern entrance, and then better conditions, definitely VFR south side. And for Mentasta, though, looks like a marginal VFR Sunday coming up there. And Tanita, though, VFR Portage, same forecast, VFR from morning to evening. And Chilkoot and White, VFR, but look for lower clouds on the northern entrances, possibly low enough to hit that marginal VFR category. And for the freezing levels, colder air dropping down mostly into the Mackenzie River Delta area, northwest Canada, but enough to catch the northeast interior here. So we've got at the surface down south of the Berks Range, 6,000 feet here down almost to the eastern North Gulf Coast, well, across the Panhandle, 8,000 back to the west, and 10,000 over the western Aleutians. Icing, not too much of a threat, none out here to the west or the western interior. Pretty thin band here coming up across the Yukon River, a little more significant or better chance of some isolated moderate rime icing, 6,000 to 7,000 feet. And then this gradually shifting out of the southern Panhandle, that'd be more of the mixed variety. And that associated with this upper level low, they'll gradually be shifting out of the area slowly and drying coming in behind it. Northwest winds here 50 to 60 knots at 33,000 feet. Across the central interior, stronger branch at about 90 cutting across eastern Aleutians. 9,000 foot wind flow chart. Weak low here near Cape Yakataga. West-northwest 10 to 15 for the Panhandle. Westerlies, for the most part, 15 to maybe as high as 25 knots in the interior. Same thing for the Arctic coast. Lighter for Kodiak Island. High pressure dominated the Bering Sea, but winds on the increase way out west as a next frontal system presses in against the high. Those winds near Shimei and Attu pick up to about 35 knots. Same pattern at 3,000 feet here. That southerly flow out over the far western Aleutians, 20 to 25 knots. Otherwise, high pressure, light winds with the Bering Sea and the Aleutians, westerly through the interior, 15 to 20, maybe some 20 knotters there for the Alaska or the Brooks Range to the central eastern Arctic coast, 15 to 20 here across the eastern interior, but pretty light down south of the Alaska Range, and maybe some northwesterlies up to 20 knots on the west coast of Prince of Wales Island. And for turbulence, nothing really significant. Could be some light to isolated moderate chop there, small aircraft here, right along the Tanana Valley to the possibly the Alaska Range and also over the southern southeast coast with possible moderate chop early for Prince of Wales Island.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and joining us today is Eric Stevens from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Thank you for joining us, Eric.
My pleasure, Dave.
Thank you. And you're joining us here to talk a little bit more about satellites and how satellites work, and especially one neat feature that's working over Alaska right now. What is that?
Well, there's a lot of weather satellites and a lot of instruments on these satellites, and there are new generations going up and new instruments. This includes something called the Day-Night Band, which is not a cover band at the local bar, but it's a new satellite that is very useful, especially here in Alaska, especially in the winter.
In the wintertime, yeah, that makes it a little bit hard to use some of the normal tools that we associate with weather satellite imagery.
Right. You know, one of the classic weather satellite instruments is just visible light. What would the human eye see if you were riding on a weather satellite yourself and looked down and it was black and white? You'd see the clouds reflecting the sunlight. And we've got an example from the Pacific Ocean. There's a geostationary satellite, and we can see that the eastern side of the image is in daylight. The western side, it's night over there, so you don't see anything because there's no sunlight over there. And visible imagery, it's very intuitive. You see the clouds just like you see them standing on the ground, but now you're a satellite seeing them from above. But the problem is, what about the night side of the planet? How do you track the storms? How do you know where the rain is, the snow, the weather, if you can't see the clouds? And that's why, just like a television can change from one channel to another, or a radio can change stations, satellites can change the frequency of the electromagnetic spectrum that they're looking at. We can go to infrared instead of visible light. You know, it's heat energy. You can see heat, and we've got another satellite picture from the same time, same satellite, out over the Pacific Ocean. That's the infrared side, and we're seeing temperature there. And even at night, when there's no light, everything still has a temperature.
So we're sensing something with a thermometer instead of perhaps the visible side of that, is what you're saying?
That's right. On this depiction, colder features are lighter shades, warmer features are dark. And so clouds tend to be colder than the ground. Clouds are higher in the atmosphere, it's cooler. And so that very same image on the western or the left-hand side of the globe, now we can see the clouds there, even though it's nighttime, because we're seeing the temperatures. And one nice feature is that tropical storm there, just in the middle of the northern hemisphere there, hurricane or typhoon, depending on...
That's that swirly part that we see in the middle of the image?
There you go. You can even see the eye on it there, especially in the infrared image. So we've got two kinds of imagery there from the same satellite, different instruments, you know, different channels like on a television, visible and infrared. You know, it turns out there's no one magic tool. Each has its strengths, each has its flaws, weaknesses. The visible is nice, it's intuitive, it's easy to understand, but doesn't work at night. Infrared is nice, it works at night, you can see temperatures, but there is a catch. What if your clouds and the nearby bare ground or open water, what if those were about the same temperature?
Oh, that's going to be hard to figure out what's going on.
If you can only see temperature and you have two features that are the same temperature, they will look the same. You won't be able to tell. They're camouflaged. This happens, especially, it can happen around Alaska, especially over the ocean when you have low clouds that are the same temperature as the open water.
It happens quite a bit in Alaska.
We have an example. Now, this is from a different geostationary satellite. It's down over the Atlantic Ocean. Look in the South Atlantic. In infrared, we've highlighted in a yellow circle there. There's some patches of clouds, but it looks like there's a clear area in the middle of that image. That's the infrared look. But let's take a look at the visible channel, and we can see there's a stripe of clouds across the middle of that circle that is only visible in the visible. The trick here is that those are low clouds of about the same temperature as the surrounding ocean. So from an infrared point of view, where you're seeing temperature, The clouds in the water nearby are the same temperature. They look the same. It's only on the visible that you can see what stands out as the actual imagery.
Okay.
Two tools, each have their strengths and weaknesses. Can we combine them? That's where the day-night band comes in.
Okay.
It's a super sensitive visible sensor that can actually see by moonlight. It can even see the aurora.
Wow.
And in Alaska, we have long winter nights. We can use that day-night band. Here's an example from that storm that blew the Kullik drilling platform ashore near Kodiak Island in December back in 2012. This image is right near when that storm happened, and it's in the middle of the night in December.
But this looks like visible imagery.
Looks like daytime imagery. It's amazing. That sensor can take any little bit of moonlight and just make the most of it. And we can see so much detail. Even in the northern part of the image there, you can see some aurora up there. The northern lights
That's that band that goes across the Arctic slope?
You got it. That's the northern lights. We're seeing black and white image here, so you don't get the green or the purple colors there. But that is the aurora. There's another example of the day-night band, and this is from January of 2013. It's about 4 in the morning, and this is a snapshot from Weather Service software. And we can even see in the middle of the image, there's the lights of Fairbanks and North Pole over to Eielson Air Force Base. Anchorage and Matsu lights, city lights, are evident as well. Sure, we can see, even though it's 4 in the morning in January, there is no sunlight to be had, that just enough moonlight is available that this sensor can see that. So we're trying to solve that puzzle where visible light is good, but only during the daytime. IR is good at night, but you can't see the difference between clouds and ground sometime. The day-night band is an attempt to do the best of both with one tool. And it's brand new for Alaska here, and we're hoping to use it in the forecast process and help predict storms, weather patterns, to help get good forecasts for people.
Okay, another tool in the weather toolkit for meteorologists in Alaska and researchers worldwide. Thank you so much, Eric, for joining us today. And you can learn more about Dehne and the day-night band by going to the web address that you see on your screen. For Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider. And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis showing ice still pretty close in toward Kaktovik, no more than a mile or so off the coast, and I believe so even for Prudhoe Bay on eastward, then pulling back here to the west, and heavier ice, well, from the eastern Beaufort Sea coast right through this zone here, and not a lot of change expected in this for the next 4 or 5 days. And for coastal water forecast, a little breezy along the southeast coast tomorrow. Northwest 25, seas 7 to 9 feet for small craft advisories. Lighter winds on the north coast, west 20, southeast 15 for Lynn Canal. Swinging around to the northwest there for Stevens Passage at 10 knots, but Clarence Strait, southeast 20 knots, 4-foot seas. And then they'll go northwest, light northwest on Monday. Actually, I'd call it variable winds, 10 knots over the central and southern inside waters, 2-foot seas. South 15, Lynn Canal, seas 3 feet. And northwest 15 now on the north coast, 6-foot seas, and westerlies lighter, 10 to 15 with 5-foot seas. Prince William Sound, light winds tomorrow out of the northwest predominantly with slight seas. West 15 for the eastern North Gulf Coast, northwest back over the western zone, and then the Barren Islands west at 20. Kamishek Bay, small craft advisories, west 25, 7-foot seas, northwest at 10 for Cook Inlet. Outlook for Monday, no change. A little more variable here for Cook Inlet, actually calling area north of Forelands east at 10, but seas still 2 feet. West 15 coming out Kamishek Bay, turns northwest across the Barrens, east at 10. Light east winds, Prince William Sound, and the North Gulf Coast with seas 2 to 3 feet. Bristol Bay, northwest at 10 for tomorrow with light winds for the Alaska Peninsula from the west-southwest at about 10 knots. That southwest breeze extends all the way up to Sitkinak. Otherwise, Kodiak Island, west-southwest 10 at 15. Outlook for Monday, Kodiak Island, variable at 10, about sums it up there. Westerlies predominantly for the Shelikof Strait area. And then northwest 15 here from Sitkinak to Castle Cape, and Castle Cape to Cape Sarachev, north at 15. Pretty light winds on the north side there, west to 10, seas down to 2 feet, and Bristol Bay, west 15 with 3-foot seas. Out west, way out west, frontal boundary edging eastward. That's going to kick the winds up, probably staying precipitation free out here though, for Shimmy and Attu. That'll be west to Kisk Island at 25 knot wind, otherwise east at 15. Northeast 10 to 15, Adak and Atka, northeast at 15 for the Fox Islands with those seas 4 to maybe 5 feet. Outlook for Monday, staying light on the winds here, east-northeast 10 to 15 with the seas in that 2 to 5 foot range. Now the small craft advisories advance into the central Aleutians in the afternoon from the east-southeast to 25 and 30 knot winds. Under gale force at this point for the western Aleutians, those seas building to 11 feet. Southwest coast, west 10 to 15 tomorrow, otherwise 20 knot westerlies for St. Matthew Island, light northwest for the Pribilofs, southwest 20 Norton Sound, and west to 20 for St. Lawrence Island. Outlook for Monday, no change, west-southwest 20 knots, St. Lawrence Island into Norton Sound, west 20 on the north coast or north of Nunivak Island, south side northwest 15 Pribilofs, light winds out of the south, southwest 20 for St. Matthew Island. And for the eastern Beaufort Sea coastline, west to southwest 10 to 15 and south 20 for the central coast, turning southeast on the west side, and then here from Cape Beaufort down across the Chukchi Sea, south to southwest to 15. Those winds will turn north to northwest to west here for the Chukchi Sea on Monday, and from Cape Beaufort northward there on the west side, 20 knots out of the north. And now small craft advisories and even brisk wind advisories here in the eastern Beaufort Sea coast as those winds increase to 25 knots with seas in those open areas at 5 feet. And for tonight, this weakening front, it's not going to pull a whole lot of moisture south of the Berks Range. It will be a narrow band of light rain with it coming into the eastern interior. It should be a little bit heavier over through here than it will be back to the northwest there where that very weak warm front exists. Weak trough, low clouds, maybe some drizzle, definitely lower flying conditions there, otherwise fair over southern Alaska. Rain diminishes over the Panhandle, leading to a mostly dry day in part, except for maybe Hyder and Stewart, lingering showers. Sunny southern Alaska, moisture here through the central interior, back up to this weak warm front, which that whole system pushes in on Monday with maybe some, or the heaviest amounts of rain will be over the eastern Arctic coast and North Slope. Sunny again, southern Alaska, and dry over the Panhandle.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.